Have you ever heard an argument that goes something like this? If we allow this one change, everything else will follow. That type of reasoning shows up in a lot of debates, and it's called a slippery slope argument. A slippery slope argument claims that allowing one step will inevitably lead to a chain of increasingly extreme outcomes. The reasoning usually looks like this. First, A happens. Then A leads to B. B leads to C. And eventually you end up somewhere far worse than where you started. Sometimes slippery slope arguments are actually logical, but often the steps in the chain aren't actually demonstrated. They're just assumed. You sometimes hear this type of reasoning in debates about gender. For example, someone might say, if society recognizes gender, then anyone could claim any identity at any time. If anyone can claim any identity, then categories like gender lose meaning. And if those categories lose meaning, then social systems built around them will collapse. That's the slippery slope. Notice what the argument depends on. Each step in the chain needs evidence. A needs to actually lead to B. B needs to actually lead to C. And C needs to actually lead to the predicted outcome. If even one of those links is weak or unsupported, the entire chain becomes questionable. But slippery slope arguments often skip that step. Instead of demonstrating the connections, they assume them. In many real-world systems, social changes don't unfold as simple chains. Policies get defined more precisely, rules get clarified, institutions adapt. So predicting a dramatic outcome requires more than imagining a sequence of events. It requires showing why each step is likely to happen. Without that evidence, the argument becomes speculation rather than reasoning. It's important to note that slippery slopes aren't always fallacies. Sometimes one decision genuinely can lead to others. But when that's the case, the connections between those steps need to be explained clearly. Otherwise, the argument relies on fear of possible outcomes, rather than evidence of probable ones. When you hear a slippery slope argument, a helpful question to ask is simple. What evidence shows that each step in the chain will actually happen? If that evidence isn't there, the argument might be sliding much faster than the logic supports. Because imagining a future outcome is easy, but demonstrating that it will actually happen is much harder, a good reasoning requires showing the difference.